Tonight, Collingwood stars caught in a crash shock on the way to their must-win SCG final. A prince opens up on his pain. William reveals the Queen's procession brought back haunting memories. The Reserve Bank boss faces a grilling on interest rates and predicts a big fall for house prices. A grandmother fighting for life after a freak incident. The push to make it harder to buy paracetamol painkillers. And all aboard the Geelong finals train as the Lions brace for a showdown. The latest from inside the MCG.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Two Collingwood teammates have been caught up in a shock crash on the way to their must-win final at the SCG. The pair was left stranded on the Monash Freeway, forcing the team charter flight to Sydney to be pushed back.
The two Pies stars stranded on the side of the Monash. The front end of their car caved in. Beau McCreery and Josh Carmichael were shaken, but thankfully no injuries. The pair ran into trouble on their way to the airport to catch the team's charter flight to Sydney. The scare forced the plane and their teammates to wait for around 45 minutes. McCreery made the flight, but Carmichael was stuck, having to deal with the fallout and paperwork to remove his car off the freeway. Finally in Sydney, McCreery wasn't keen to talk about the crash.
How are you feeling after this morning?
Yeah, I'm all good.
Was it a bit of a scary moment?
Yeah, it was a bit on it. I'm all good though.
Mate?
With the drama behind them, the Pies had a light run on the SCG in a closed session. McCreery on the track and up for the fight for the preliminary final, showing no ill effects of this morning's drama. The Magpie Army is on their way to greet them. More than 300 fans will also be catching buses, leaving just after midnight for the 10-hour trek. And after sorting out the tow truck, Carmichael has since made it to Sydney, forced to fly commercial as his teammates trained. The drama of this morning forcing the Pies to cancel a scheduled media opportunity. In sport, we'll hear from Mason Cox's parents who have flown all the way from the USA, as has Brownlow medalist Peter Moore on son Darcy's magical run to the preliminary final. Peter?
Mitch Cleary in the Harbour City, thank you. Prince William has revealed that walking behind the Queen's coffin revived painful memories of his mother's death. He opened up in touching moments with mourners as he inspected mounting floral tributes at Sandringham.
Beyond these iron gates, memories of Christmas holidays with the woman he knew as Granny. Prince William and wife Kate inspecting the growing sea of tributes to the Queen from her Sandringham estate neighbours.
Yeah, missing her drive around. You could come and see them go into the church when she used to be able to get about.
This crowd came to pay their respects but got much more. Britain's next king candid about his grief. Opening up, revealing the painful memories evoked by yesterday's public procession, trailing his grandmother's coffin down the Mall just as he did as a 15-year-old behind his mother's casket in 1997.
Doing the walk yesterday was challenging. Back to your memories.
I thought his mother would have been proud of him.
Many here weren't expecting this royal visit.
And I just got loads of handshakes of the future king and the Princess of Wales. It was just all crazy.
This, though, the palace acknowledging grief shared beyond London, in a place the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh used as a winter escape.
Happy Christmas.
It was here Her Majesty recorded the first of 64 televised Christmas Day addresses.
Television has made it possible for many of you to see me in your homes on Christmas Day.
Stepping out alone, this the first solo appearance from the newly installed Prince and Princess of Wales. Titles bearing the weight of a family history not lost on the royal couple or those here to greet them.
I think we all miss Diana. It's an emotional day for everybody.
It's natural, really. They were always going to become the Prince and Princess of Wales, so it's how it moves on.
And that's something this grieving grandson knows. In Sandringham, David Woywood, 7 News.
World leaders, including Anthony Albanese, are starting to arrive in London for the Queen's funeral. Ashley Mullaney joins us now, and Ashley, they will be welcomed by the King this weekend.
That's right, Peter. A long list of Prime Ministers and Presidents will attend a state reception at Buckingham Palace in what will be the first international event hosted by the King. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is due to arrive here in London later this afternoon. He will be among 2,000 guests attending Monday's funeral at Westminster. Also in attendance, US President Joe Biden, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. As for Prime Minister Albanese's first engagement, that will be with his new British counterpart, Liz Truss. No doubt the pair discussing jobs and trade. Peter?
Ashley Mullaney, thank you. London is going to extremes to prepare for 1 million mourners on the streets under the protection of a massive security operation. The historic service has been planned down to the finest detail and is now being rehearsed to make sure it's fit for a queen.
Black tunics and bearskin hats. Muffled drums. Rehearsals for Her Majesty's funeral under the cover of darkness. Quick steps, strong arms. 142 naval servicemen practice pulling the Queen's gun carriage and coffin for the entire funeral procession. That carriage had carried Queen Victoria, 3 kings and a Prime Minister, now being prepared for a monarch who served longer than all of them. This will be a service both drawing on history and making it at the same time.
So state funeral is the largest, most formal, the highest ranking funeral you can get. So absolutely everything will be out for Her Majesty.
London is calmly preparing for what will be one of the most elaborate state ceremonies the nation has seen. Security unprecedented.
The entire procession is yet again an exercise in precision. Everything is timed to the minute. 10:35, they lift up the coffin, carry it onto the gun carriage. 10:44, it leaves here, Westminster Palace, headed for Westminster Abbey. The pipes and drums lead, the King and royal family following behind. The entire route will be lined by Royal Navy and Royal Marines. 10:52, they arrive at the Abbey, unload the coffin, and at 11 o'clock precisely, the funeral begins.
The service will have 2,000 attending, from heads of state to heroes of the community. Officials revealing the Queen helped plan her own funeral, choosing the music, readings and order of service. Already, members of the public are lining up outside, these two the first.
We're here to pay our respects. We're here to celebrate the life of the longest reigning monarch of our time.
The service will last just an hour. At 11:55, last post will sound and the nation will observe 2 minutes silence. Then reveille, the national anthem and a lament will be played by the Queen's piper. It will be finished by noon. And then the Queen's final journey begins.
Like Wednesday's procession, the King, Princess Anne, Princes Andrew and Edward will follow behind. William and Harry too, side by side again. They will follow Wednesday's route in reverse. The gun carriage physically pulled back past Parliament Square, Downing Street, through Horse Guards, back to Buckingham Palace, up Constitution Hill to Wellington Arch.
As many people as possible, yes, can be in the Abbey, yes, watching on television, but actually saying their farewell to the Queen in person on that route.
Just as in Scotland this week, the coffin will be loaded into the state hearse, then driven 2 hours to Windsor Castle, a final chance for the public to make roadside farewells. The last stretch down the Long Walk, before arriving at St George's Chapel. It was here Prince Philip, the Queen's husband of 73 years, was farewelled last year. They'll hold a service with 800 guests, mostly the Queen's staff, past and present. And then, when the cameras are gone, 7:30 that night, the royal family will assemble again for Elizabeth's private burial, beside her father, mother, sister and husband, together again.
And Chris Reason joins us now from Westminster. Chris, we will see another vigil tonight.
Yeah, good evening to you, Peter. It was one of the most powerful moments we've seen since the death of the Queen. The Prince's Vigil in Scotland. King Charles leading his siblings in an honour guard around their mother's coffin. Yes, it's going to happen again here at Westminster Hall tonight, with reports there could be another Prince's Vigil led this time by the next generation of royals, Princes William and Harry, and 6 other grandchildren doing their own vigil sometime in the next 48 hours, with Harry being given special permission, a one-off, to wear his uniform. Also tonight, confirmation that Queen Consort Camilla will continue with her duties over these next few days, despite nursing a broken toe, something she received before the Queen died. Peter.
Chris Reason in Westminster, thank you. And there's no let-up in the long line of mourners queuing to pay their last respects to the Queen. Thousands are waiting up to 9 hours for a brief glimpse to say goodbye.
Lining the river of the capital, Londoners form their own guard of honour in honour of their Queen.
I've got to say thank you to her.
It'll be worth it?
Absolutely.
Under the shadow of monuments, mourners, hundreds of thousands of them, waiting patiently for hours.
We couldn't have not taken the chance to come and say goodbye to such a majestic person. She's history in front of our eyes, and history stopped the moment that she passed away.
A kilometre into the marathon, a minor milestone, numbered and coloured wristbands handed out.
We're quite excited to be almost getting our wristband.
The ticket to continue along the Thames and to leave the queue briefly to get food, coffee.
I think people are enjoying taking a little break from the queue to come and grab a coffee and a seat.
Even ice cream.
It's been quite manic, to be fair.
For those not willing to risk their place in line, there's Maddie Fuller.
Cheers. Have a lovely day.
The Kiwi setting up a makeshift bar to serve thousands of thirsty potential patrons.
It's early in the day. I imagine people will be drinking a lot more later on.
By mid-morning, the wait had become a rush. Barriers were brought in to snake the queue through public parks on the banks of the Thames. 750,000 to 1 million people will wind their way through, but not all will make it. Authorities warning there is a maximum capacity and it's creeping closer with every step. Those not willing to risk it tuning in. The live stream of the Queen's coffin attracting tens of thousands of views an hour.
It's been fun walking through the queues and everything, and then it's very different and sombre in there.
For those willing to queue, a journey of many hours for a sacred few seconds. In London, Amelia Brace, 7 News.
The Reserve Bank Governor predicts house prices could fall by as much as 10% as higher interest rates bite. Philip Lowe faced scrutiny at a parliamentary inquiry, telling Australians to brace for more price pain.
Heading to a parliamentary inquiry expecting a grilling.
Good morning.
The Reserve Bank Governor gets one earlier than he thought.
Will you resign from your position if this committee finds that you didn't act in the right way?
No, I have no comment for you.
The once official questioning began.
I welcome representatives from the Reserve Bank of Australia appearing for today's hearing.
He was much more talkative.
We know we're making some people very unhappy.
Predicting things will soon be back in sync.
I know this year is very difficult, particularly for people without buffers, but if we manage this well as a country, we can look forward to prosperity again.
Before prosperity, though, more pain. Further rises coming to tame inflation. The only question, how big?
At our next board meeting, we'll be considering whether it's a 25 basis point increase or a 50 basis point increase.
Mr Lowe predicted last year that official rates wouldn't rise until 2024.
Some people think that was a mistake, but and it may well have been.
They've risen a record 5 times in consecutive months. And for those already struggling to meet their mortgages, Philip Lowe had some more bad news, predicting house values will continue to fall this year sharply.
It would not surprise me if prices came down by a cumulative 10%.
Good news for buyers, and for owners it still means property values have risen 15% in the past 2 years, as Mr Lowe leaves as he arrived.
Governor Lowe, why won't you apologise to the Australian people?
Knowing the interest in him remains high. Mark Ray, 7 News.
A man has been stabbed to death at Noble Park. Paramedics were called after neighbours reported hearing screams from a house. The victim was found with critical injuries and died at the scene. 2 people have been arrested. There's a sea of blue and white heading for the MCG tonight. 60,000 are expected as Geelong faces Brisbane in just over an hour and a half. The Cats, hoping home state advantage gets them into the grand final.
At Geelong train station, the Cats faithful exuded confidence.
Oh my gosh, all my dreams come true. I'm just so excited.
Moorabool Street will be popping.
As they headed to Melbourne, in amongst the crowds tonight will be the return of the most famous feline fan. 2 years ago, Troy West retired his Catman persona because of online trolling.
Death threats and the horrible abuse, and it was constant.
But now he's back by popular demand.
Parents saying, please, my kids miss you, like lots and lots of messages and overwhelming support and love.
He insists the cat's purr is mightier than the lion's roar.
Go Cats! Go Lions!
Every bit as passionate, the head of Melbourne's Lions Museum.
It's a love that we really want to put back into the name Fitzroy.
Ian Crawford and the museum totally devoted to Brisbane's origins as Fitzroy.
It's definitely a Victorian team playing Geelong. The dear Fitzroy Football Club definitely is.
And as the MCC members' gates opened a short time ago, a conundrum. This lion and cat live together.
It's a bit hated sometimes.
Claws out tonight. Nick McCallum, 7 News.
And Tim Watson is inside the MCG this evening. Tim, it's time for the Cats to deliver.
It is, Mitch. They were minor premiers for a reason. The flag favourites have had a week off too to rest up before tonight's clash. Chief Football reporter Tommy Brown is on the boundary, and Tom, a lot of rain about. It's going to be a slippery night.
Tim, there's no doubt, good evening, the conditions will have a bearing on tonight's game. We'll have the final teams at 6:50. The big question is whether Brisbane will still go in tall. The other big question tonight, Geelong's age and how the 2 weeks off will benefit them tonight. And in particular, this sketchy preliminary finals record. They have achieved the ultimate success under Chris Scott, but they've also been met with preliminary finals heartbreak. I'll have more as part of the build-up inside the MCG, outside the Geelong rooms. Shortly in sport, we'll hear directly from the Cats, Tim.
Next time, we'll check back in with you really soon. Also coming up, some familiar faces join Collingwood for their final preparations after a chaotic morning, and why Roger Federer has decided to call time on his illustrious career. Mitch, also Ben Rutten has found a new home. We'll have all those details soon.
We'll see you then. Thanks very much indeed, Tim. A family is asking for help after a freak incident. Next, how a couch on a road unleashed a tragic chain of events, costing a grandmother her leg. Also coming up, first it was ambulances, now the 000 crisis is threatening police. The woman who brought a knife to a fist fight. Later, the push to cut the working week back to 32 hours without cutting pay.
And it clears up tonight before another burst of wet weather tomorrow. I'll show you when that'll hit later in 7 News.
Another teenager has been hit by a car at Wallen just hours after a 13-year-old boy was hit and killed in the same suburb. A 13-year-old girl was crossing the road this morning when she was struck. She was taken to the Royal Children's Hospital with head injuries. Police are still investigating the boy's death after he was killed in a driveway yesterday evening. A 74-year-old grandmother is fighting for life after her car crashed into a couch left in the middle of the road. The impact caused her to veer into oncoming traffic, and police are on a mission to find out who left the couch there.
From dropping off her granddaughter to fighting for life in an air ambulance, all in the blink of an eye.
It's a little bit hard to wrap our heads around.
Doting grandmother Vicky McKenzie barely survived a horror crash in Bellpost Hill.
Hard to believe. You see and hear about these kind of things but never think that it'll actually happen.
What caused Mrs McKenzie to veer into oncoming traffic? A couch in the middle of Creamery Road near Geelong. Police believe she didn't see it and hit it head on.
It's extremely dangerous. Clearly, this poor woman's ended up in hospital with in a critical condition.
The impact caused Mrs McKenzie's car to veer onto the wrong side of the road and hit another car head on. That driver and a young child were unhurt. Mrs McKenzie wasn't as lucky.
She's lost a leg, lots of internal damage.
Now, police want to find out how the couch came to be in the path of traffic.
Whether it's fallen off the back of a truck or appeared there otherwise, a couch in the middle of a road is, of course, extremely dangerous.
Be it a careless accident or deliberate act, her family just wants to know why. Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Police response times will be recorded and made public if the opposition wins the upcoming state election. It's part of a pledge to overhaul emergency services, and the Police Association is welcoming the move.
Promising to deliver police response time targets and release them publicly.
What it does do is it gives an opportunity for the management to have KPIs to deliver for the Victorian community.
As part of a push to make the force more transparent.
This helps us as police officers. It helps us know where to focus, how to improve and what to look at if we're not meeting that.
Not a matter for the state government, according to the Police Minister.
Police response times are an operational matter for Police Command, and what we do know is that crime is down in Victoria.
What both sides can agree on is funding of Blue Hub, the force's mental health support service.
That's going to draw a great amount of reassurance from injured workers and from those that aren't, to know that if they struggle with their mental health over the next 4 years, there'll be someone in there that they can turn to.
Matthew Guy has also promised $125 million to fix the broken 000 crisis. That's on top of $333 million already committed by the Premier.
I want Victorians to be confident that when they ring 000, it gets answered, and answered very quickly.
And he'll pay for it.
With money allocated from reprioritising the Box Hill to Cheltenham Rail Tunnel, and we'll put it into ambulance dispatch.
Of which they've spent
around $5 to $6 billion to date.
That's despite the coalition very publicly pledging $8 billion to regional Victoria alone.
He can promise the world, well, this bloke won't even deliver an atlas in government.
Chanel Bella, 7 News.
Stunned motorists have watched in horror as a road rage brawl broke out in Adelaide traffic and quickly escalated. As the two fought, a woman brought the man in red what appears to be a knife.
Damn, bro, they really getting on it right here.
The man in black immediately fled to his car before other drivers intervened. Paracetamol could be harder to get under a radical rethink. Next, why the painkiller is facing bans and limits on sales. Also coming up, how a police officer arrived at a crash scene to find out her dad was the victim. And why drivers in the north and west are facing disruptions this weekend. Drivers are being warned to expect delays and detours with major road closures in the west and north from 8 p.m. tonight. Westgate Tunnel project works are shutting down Footscray Road in both directions from Docklink Road to Appleton Dock Road until Monday morning. Craigieburn Road will be closed between Hanson and Bridgewater Roads for upgrades for the next week. A police officer has described the moment she arrived at a crash scene to see her own father lying on the road. The driver who hit and killed her dad, then sped away, has today pleaded guilty.
Police officer Sophie Thompson stumbled across a horror hit run on her way to work and soon realised it was her dad who'd been left for dead.
The coward didn't even stop or brake afterwards.
Sophie's father, David Thompson, was killed while riding his bike last October when Bradley Spark crossed onto the wrong side of the road and hit the cyclist. Mr Thompson was thrown 21 metres, but Spark fled the scene. The 40-year-old then lied about his involvement in the crash, telling police his car had been stolen and that he'd only heard about the collision on the radio. Spark today pleaded guilty to the hit run. Senior Constable Thompson telling the court of her anguish attending the scene of her father's death. "I'm unable to forget my dad laying in the middle of the road covered in a white sheet. My world shattered into pieces." Mr Thompson's son also spoke of his heartache. "The loss of my father cannot be described in words. He was taken away from us in a way we would not wish on anyone." Bradley Spark has accepted he'll spend a considerable period in prison for his crimes. A judge will sentence him in November. Each of Spark's offences carry a maximum penalty of 10 years behind bars. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
The final design and cost of Australia's nuclear submarines will be revealed early next year. Today marks 1 year since the AUKUS alliance was formed. The fleet will be the same as the ones operated in the US or UK.
That optimal pathway is starting to take shape. We can see it. And we are confident we will be in a position to make that announcement in the first part of next year.
The cost of the project will most likely be revealed in next year's budget. Ukraine says a mass grave of hundreds of soldiers and unidentified civilians has been found in a recaptured city. As many as 440 bodies are said to have been recovered in the city of Izium. Meanwhile, in a face-to-face meeting, Russian President Vladimir Putin has told China's Xi Jinping he understands Beijing's questions and concerns about Ukraine. Sales of paracetamol could be restricted to combat the growing number of teenagers overdosing on the painkiller. The Therapeutic Goods Administration is considering the tougher rules following a shock report.
It's the most common drug in the country, but paracetamol is being abused at an alarming rate.
There's probably a lack of understanding about how dangerous it can be.
Teenage overdoses have doubled in recent years, with girls up to 3 times more likely than boys to poison themselves with paracetamol.
One of the more significant issues related to paracetamol is the permanent damage that it can do to your organs.
More than 3,400 Victorians overdosed on paracetamol last year. Almost half of those were deliberate.
Obviously, the numbers that we've seen indicates there's a serious problem.
The Therapeutic Goods Administration is now pushing for stricter rules to combat the dangers, smaller packets and limits of 1 to 2 per person, and a ban on sales to minors unless they have a prescription.
Whatever we can do to reduce harm and reduce the risk of overdose harm for teenagers and adolescents whilst not compromising the access for legitimate patients.
Symptoms of a possible overdose range from drowsiness, stomach pain and vomiting to liver failure and death.
4 grams in a day. Going over and above that amount is not going to provide any additional pain relief and puts patients at risk.
Patients are being urged to read dosage instructions carefully and not panic buy the drug. Consultation about the changes is open until mid-October. Christy Mayer, 7 News.
There's a big push to cut the full-time working week back to 32 hours without cutting pay. We'll have the details next on 7 News. Also, a former hospital worker walks free from court cleared of murdering a nurse. Our police taking to their bikes to power a good cause. And coming up in sport, a class act calls it quits. See the moving tributes to Roger Federer. A cold case murder that sparked $1 million reward and a TV show may never be solved after a jury acquitted the prime suspect. In 1986, Colin Graham was the last known person to see the nurse alive.
He's been linked to a brutal murder for more than 3 decades. But today, Colin Graham put the case behind him after a jury acquitting the 66-year-old over the murder of Ina Doris Warwick in 1986. The body of the 25-year-old nurse was found in her Ringwood North home. She'd been stabbed to death. Police determined she died shortly after returning home from dinner with Graham, who worked as a hospital orderly. He was interviewed at the time, denying any involvement. But in 2018, 32 years after the crime, Graham was charged with her murder. The jury heard that 3 separate witnesses' accounts that Graham confessed to killing Ms. Warwick, but his defence team questioned why they waited so long to reveal that information. The trial lasted just under 2 weeks. It took the jury just 1 day to return the verdict, not guilty, bringing an end to an investigation that lasted 36 years. A mystery that now may never be solved. Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
Australia's share market has taken another hit off the back of a tumultuous week. Finance editor Gemma Acton has the details.
Thanks, Peter. A sorry end to a bumpy week for the ASX 200, today shedding 96 points to close at 6,747. Weighing the most heavily were miners and energy stocks. The Aussie dollar is teetering on the brink of 67 US cents, while oil prices slipped again overnight. And in the last 20 years, the Aussie dollar has only been this weak a handful of times, during the worst of the pandemic, the global financial crisis, and after the dot-com bubble burst around the turn of the century. But that's just against the US dollar, which has had a stellar run recently. Against other currencies, the Aussie dollar has actually had a better 2022 than most. Peter.
Thanks, Gemma. A shorter working week for the same amount of pay is being touted as the way of the future. The Nurse and Midwifery Federation is pushing for workplace reform as part of a global movement to change the way we work.
Calls to ditch the 5-day working week are growing louder.
It's just a mindset thing that we have to get over, that 38 is a magical number. It's not a magical number.
Especially in a post-COVID world.
I think we need to be a little bit more time efficient.
It gives people more time to spend time with their families.
Some Australian businesses have already made the move, introducing 4-day, 32-hour weeks without pay cuts.
Work is just so much better.
Dennis Moriarty says in 22 years he's never seen productivity higher among staff.
They do more work in the 4 days. They come in more energised, they're more committed.
It's catching on around the world. 85% of Iceland's workforce now works a 4-day week, and trials are underway in the US, Canada, UK, Spain, Japan and New Zealand. Having more flexibility is hoped to bring more mothers back to the workforce, with many forced to leave managerial and full-time positions.
All of the evidence shows that it pays itself off, because at the moment we've got an incredible number of people on leave, fatigued.
Working fewer hours for the same money may sound too good to be true, but it's gaining momentum. The Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation has made a submission to a federal parliamentary inquiry pushing for workplace laws to be changed.
That's what the conversation we have to get started is, what stands in its way and how do we mitigate those things.
Sarah Jones, 7 News.
Active and retired police officers are back on their bikes to raise money for their fallen colleagues. The annual wall-to-wall ride from Melbourne to Canberra's Police Memorial has returned after a 3-year hiatus. Brenton Hopperton is riding in memory of his dad, who died in the line of duty.
And he told me today that he's actually riding his father's bike, so it's quite a privilege for him.
Money raised will go towards supporting their families. Sport is next with Tim Watson inside the MCG. And Tim, the Cats will be hoping to overcome a horror preliminary finals record.
That's right, Mitch. They've been here plenty of times recently, but can they overcome their hoodoo? We'll get the final word from the Cats camp after the break. Also, we're live to Sydney to check in with the Magpies and some special visitors who have flown in from the US. Exclusive details on the text message a Bomber star sent James Hird. And Roger Federer reveals why he's calling it quits. Welcome back to the MCG, where we're an hour out from the bounce now. Returning to Chief Football Reporter Tom Brown. Tom, the Cats will look to put a poor preliminary final record to bed tonight.
Tim, for most clubs, it's an enviable preliminary finals record. The Cats have made the prelims 5 of the past 6 seasons, but have only made the grand final crucially once. Now, there's no changes expected late tonight at this stage. A short time ago, I spoke to the Cats directly about their build-up.
No, totally different year, different circumstances. You know, we're rapt to be involved this stage of the year against some quality opposition. So if we play our best tonight, hopefully we're there next week. They've played that setup all year, so we'll be ready for that. They've got a dangerous forward line. Those tools can be a handful in the air, and then we've also got some dangerous small forwards when it's brought to ground. So our defenders will have to be on their game tonight.
Brisbane tall in greasy conditions. Meantime, moving to the Bombers tonight, Tim, Zach Merritt has expressed at a function reportedly reservations about James Hird becoming coach, but I have reported today and revealed that Merritt has reached out to Hird via text, saying the comments were out of context to create headlines. Merritt and the group support Hird applying for the job, and Merritt will be ecstatic and pumped to work with Hird if he becomes and is selected to become Essendon coach. Moving to Melbourne, a lot of trade discussion surrounding Pickett, Cozzy Pickett. I've spoken to senior Melbourne sources tonight. There's nothing in that. He's absolutely committed, the live wire, an exciting player to next year. And just finally, a great result for Ben Rutten. He's got a senior assistant role, officially a lifeline at Richmond at Punt Road. But tonight, Tim, all about this preliminary final. So much on the line.
So much on the line. Thanks, Tom. And former Geelong Premiership star Harry Taylor joins me now. And Harry, the preparation has been pretty much perfect for Geelong for this game tonight.
Yeah, it's been great. We've had a really good build-up. We've got a healthy list to choose from. We're well rested and really looking forward to a big challenge.
And they'd be loving the conditions out here tonight. Does that mean that we're going to see Joel Selwood and Paddy Dangerfield starting the centre at the beginning of the game, do you think?
Yeah, it might do. Driving up, it was pretty wet and wild, but the coaches will have some plans for all conditions. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. It's not too much longer before the bounce down.
You've got such a flexible team. Lachie Neale's been in great form too for the Brisbane Lions. Do you tag him tonight, or do you just have somebody set for him in case he gets off the leash?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. The coaches would have been debating it all week. Not sure which way they're going to lean, but we just know how good his final series has been. So at some point, I assume someone is going to have to put a bit of attention into him.
Jeremy Cameron's been in great form too. Expecting that, no doubt, to continue again tonight?
Yeah, just seeing him kick the goals he does at training, I've got no doubt he's going to have a really good game for us as well. He's in really good condition, been playing well and really confident.
Harry, thanks for joining us. I'm not going to ask you who you think's going to win tonight.
No,
I think I know the answer to that question.
We're all good. Enjoy the game. Thanks.
Go on, you, Harry Taylor there. And it's all systems go for Collingwood too after a morning of chaos. Mitch Cleary joins us live from Sydney. And Mitch, it was far from an ideal preparation for a pair of Pies this morning.
Well, Tim, the Magpies charter flight was delayed almost an hour as forward Beau McCreary rushed from that Monash freeway car crash. Teammate Josh Carmichael flying later, having to deal with the paperwork, but he's since joined teammates and fellow emergencies Ollie Henry, Callum Brown and Nathan Kruger with the squad. A famous Magpie is also here, hoping to see a famous Collingwood win. Brownlow medalist Peter Moore watched on proudly as son Darcy joined teammates for one last run ahead of tomorrow's preliminary final.
I wasn't thinking I was going to be coming back for finals, so no, they've surprised me and surprised everybody else. I think they've surprised themselves as well.
Moore Sr. arrived from his home in the US yesterday. The former Magpie had an illustrious career, but hopes his son can achieve something he never did, taste premiership success.
It's a stretch, but, you know, they've got a chance, the same as everybody else. They've got to bring their best on the day and hopefully it'll be good enough.
He's not the only one to touch down from the States. Mason Cox's parents and brothers also in town.
I cannot believe it. We're just so excited that it's happening and looking forward to a great game tomorrow.
The family hope to see a repeat of the 2018 prelim where Cox was Collingwood's champion.
Well, I think he's capable, but we'll see. Well, we just had such a blast in the 2018 and couldn't miss this one, that's for sure.
The Swans also had a special guest at training, a pep talk from the Premier ahead of the prelim.
Smash it out.
Mitch Cleary, 7 News.
Tennis icon Roger Federer has announced his retirement after 24 years on the professional tour. Widely regarded as one of the best players ever, the 41-year-old will hit the court just one last time.
Roger Federer reaches his final set.
The Labour Cup next week in London will be my final ATP event.
20 Grand Slam titles, a record 8 at Wimbledon, 6 in Australia. The Swiss star held world number 1 longer than any rival. 4.5 unbroken years at one point, and at an older age, 36. Now, 41, he's been battling injuries and 3 knee surgeries.
But I also know my body's capacities and limits, and its message to me lately has been clear.
A young ball boy, Federer dreamed of being like the game's greats back then. Today, they saluted him.
The guy is great. I mean, he's the greatest of all time, to be honest, and both on the court and off the court.
Federer's fiercest rival, Rafael Nadal. Many rate their near 5-hour Wimbledon epic in 2008 as the greatest match ever. Nadal won then and took a bow today. I wish this day would never have come.
To the game of tennis, I love you and will never leave you.
In the United States, Tim Lester, 7 News.
Mitch, what a superstar. And Geelong hasn't let us down. There's been a late change. Sam Menegola has come in for Reece Stanley. So the Cats making a late change. I think they'll win this one too, Mitch.
Might have something to do with the weather. Thank you very much, Tim. Enjoy the match. Jane Barn is next with the forecast. And Jane, not getting ahead of myself, any news on Grand Final Day yet?
Mitch, I will have my first look at Grand Final Day and it's looking pretty good. The full 8-day outlook is after the break.
Monday, the royal funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. The world unites for the grateful goodbye. 7 News is there to bring you unrivaled coverage with Britain's greatest royal team.
You'll have the best front row seat
to history.
Celebrate the life of this most remarkable woman.
Every moment live right through the day.
Join us live from midday as we farewell our Queen.
The very special event, the royal funeral, starts live with 7 News, Monday, 6 o'clock.
Hello again. The rain was a bit intense this afternoon, adding up to 3 to 7 millimetres across town. We began the day on 10. There was lots of sunshine, as expected this morning. It wasn't until the afternoon that things changed, as the temperature dropped too. We had showers tending to areas of persistent rain, with the odd storm in there. Now, that was the main part of this particular burst. It eased late afternoon, only the odd shower after that. And tonight, at the MCG, there's the risk of a brief shower in the first quarter. But after that, it is all dry for the rest of the game. Chilly though, especially in the Shane Warne stand, taking the brunt of the northerly wind. Last night, the sky lit up spectacularly north of the ranges, from Deniliquin through to Wodonga, as a mass of thunderstorms moved through. This produced a lot of lightning strikes, so then we took a bit of a break this morning, as it was generally dry at first. But that break didn't last long. The next burst of wet weather advanced from west through to east. Now, this has a repeat of those storms from last night, again north of the ranges. They may bring damaging winds in the yellow area from about Mansfield through to Bright. Yesterday's burst of wet weather out over the Tasman Sea now. Today's burst is the front that is moving through. It's all controlled by a low that is over the Bight, so that means there's more to come. Another burst tomorrow, then yet another, as the front that is way back over the Bight arrives here on Sunday. These bursts are falling on already wet ground, so these catchments remain on flood watch. There's already flooding in the Murray, Kiewa, King and Loddon rivers, as well as the Severn and Castle creeks. Around the nation tomorrow, Sydney, no wet weather at all. It should be all dry for the Swans and Pies with lots of sunshine. However, it is showery in Canberra, Hobart, Adelaide, Perth too. Brisbane has the risk of showers and storms in the morning. To Victoria, generally dry at first. Then we have widespread showers tending to areas of rain with the risk of thunderstorms, but not in these parts of Gippsland. It is cool to cold with snow in the Alps. We have gusty west and northwesterly winds that could reach gale force in these parts of the west. There is a risk of gusts strong enough to do damage. This is from late morning onwards. Closer in, we repeat. It is generally dry at first. Then another burst of wet weather. We're looking at showers tending to persistent rain. Then it eases back again tomorrow night. The city only briefly reaches 15, about 13 for much of it. Wet weather is likely from late morning to early evening. So to the 8-day outlook, we repeat once again. Showers tending for persistent rain in the afternoon and evening on Sunday, this time lasting into the evening, and just some drizzly patches as we go into Monday. Tuesday, sunny, top of 20, and then a bit of drizzle after that. We're briefly 15 tomorrow, a burst of wet weather, mainly afternoon, so get out early and later. Mitch.
OK, thanks very much, Jane. Before we go, a clarification. There is no late change for Geelong for the prelim final against Brisbane, the consequence of a fabricated tweet, and we apologise for the error. And that's the way it is this Friday, the 16th of September. Thanks for your company. For now, good night.